This is the MTG Sold podcast from May 25th to May 31st. Hey everyone, quick one this week. I want to skip most of the usual rundown and spend the time on the supply side, because that is where the most interesting stuff is happening. The price moves are fine, Edge of Eternities is up, some Commander era stuff is down, but the supply behavior underneath those moves is telling a much weirder story. Before I get into it, May 29th was the TCGPlayer Mayhem sale. So the top line numbers look insane. 8,100 units, 1.34 million in revenue, up 47% and 68% week over week. These numbers are mostly fake, and by that I mean they're real, but in the sense that sales are happening. But Mayhem compresses like 3 days of buying into one afternoon. The other 6 days this week averaged around 786 units per day, which is basically last week. So just keep that in mind in the back of your head. The weekly totals are Mayhem inflated. The individual product trends are more honest. Anyway, let's jump into supply. So, top of the thing, the Commander contradiction. The thing I keep staring at this week is 2 products on the decliners list that have no business being treated as decliners. The Commander Masters Collector Booster Box dropped about 8% on price. Volume weighted average price went from $403 to $371. And the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Commander Deck case dropped about 7.5% from $210 down to $194. Red Arrows, bad week. That is the headline version. Here is the actual version, though. Commander Masters Collector Booster Box has a sell-through of 3.87. That means for every unit sitting on the shelf, nearly 4 units sold. Average quantity is down to 36. 36. Sellers dropped 14%. The pool is draining. And with the Lost Caverns of Commander Deck, the case, it's even more aggressive. Sell-through of 4.12. That's a ratio of 4.12. The highest on the entire leaderboard this week. Average quantity is at 59.9, sorry. 59.9, down 12.5%. And here's the detail that got me. 240 units moved across only 54 orders. That is bulk buying. Someone or a handful of someones are loading up cases at nearly 5 units per order. So the price is going down and the inventory is going down faster. That is a very specific situation. It means the sellers who are left are undercutting each other into a thinning pool. They're competing on price in a market where the actual available supply is shrinking week over week. At some point, the cheap listings clear and whatever is left is priced higher because there's just less of it. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed. Maybe new supply shows up. Maybe a distributor dumps a pallet. But right now, the mechanics are pointing in one direction, and it's not the direction the red arrow suggests. Is this the lowest stakes observation in Magic Finance? Probably. Am I going to keep tracking it? Of course, because this data is going somewhere interesting, and I kind of want to see where it goes. All right, so the Lorwyn problem. On the other end of the spectrum, and I mean the complete other end, you have Lorwyn Eclipse Blight Curse. Sell-through ratio of 0.09. That's not a typo. For roughly every unit that's sold, 11 new listings showed up. Average quantity is 376, which is up 15% from last week, and sellers are ticking up. Price is down 13%. This is what a genuine oversupply situation looks like, and it's not a data artifact, not a one-week blip. Sellers are entering, inventory is stacking, nobody is buying relative to what is being listed, and the price reflects it. I bring this up because it's useful to see Lorwyn and Commander Masters side by side. Both are red on the price chart, both are decliners, but the supply stories are opposite. One is draining at nearly 4x inventory level, the other is filling up with nobody home. The price error alone doesn't tell you which situation you're in, the sell-through does. Pivoting to Edge of Eternities, we have 3 products in one trend. This is the set-level story of the week. 3 Edge of Eternity products hit the gainers list. The Counterintelligence Commander Deck was up 17.5%, the Commander Deck Sets of 2 was up 10%, and the Play Booster Display was up 8%. The Commander products are behaving the way you want to see. Supply contracting, sellers pulling back, and sell-through holding steady. Fairly clean signals. The Play Booster Display is the interesting one. Supply grew 34%. Inventory went from 221 to 296 average. Sellers held flat, and the price still went up. That is unusual. Normally, when inventory floods in at that rate, price at least flattens. Here, demand absorbed the new supply and then some. Sell-through ratio of 0.58 on a growing base. Now, is this sustainable? I generally don't know. A 34% supply increase that does not dent the price is either a sign that the demand is real and strong, or it's a sign that the supply increase has not had time to work through the market yet. Those two things look identical for about 1 to 2 weeks, and then they do not. So, the Play Booster display is the weak link. If Edge of Eternities is going to hold this set-wide momentum, that product needs to keep absorbing inventory without the price softening. If next week's supply grows another 30% and the price flattens or dips, the answer is the inventory caught up. Worth watching, probably the most actionable thing this week if you're in the Edge of Eternities ecosystem. Final Fantasy. Quick one here. Final Fantasy Collector Booster displays moved 49 units at a volume-weighted average price of 1,172. The Chocobo bundle moved around 79 units at the average price of 239, up 14%. But the Chocobo bundle is the one I care most about. Sellers dropped 27% from average 69 to 50. Sell-through is around 0.64. So that is a combination. Meaningful seller exit with demand holding is usually the early signal of a product transitioning from available to getting tight. The question is whether new sellers step in. At $239, there is margin for someone to list. If they do, the seller count stabilizes and the price plateaus. If they do not, you have a shrinking pool of supply meeting consistent demand, and the price keeps moving. I don't really know which one happens, but the seller count is the one thing to watch. Below 50 sellers for a product at this price point starts to feel thin. Quick touch on seller geography. We've been tracking this recently, and it's not really actionable, but I think it's kind of some cool information. So the Pacific Northwest continues to be the center of the TCGPlayer sealed universe, which is a sentence I did not expect to be saying regularly. Washington State accounts for 16.3% of tracked inventory. Seattle alone, 16,000 units. Idaho is second at nearly 11%, mostly from Coeur d'Alene. Oregon adds another 5%. Combined, these three states represent about a third of all listed supply on TCGPlayer. So it's Washington State, Seattle, and Idaho. California is at 8%, New York at 6.7%, and Florida at 6.6%. I don't really have a grand thesis about it. I just think it's worth knowing that a third of the market supply is concentrated in one corner of the country. If anything disrupts those sellers, shipping cost change, local regulation, a particularly bad wildfire season, whatever, it would show up in the inventory numbers fast. Geographic concentration is not a risk until it is. So what to watch next week? That's where you're listening, right? What do you care? 3 things. 1. Commander Masters Collector Booster Box. Average quantity is 36 and falling 19% per week. Sell-through is a near 4x. If that pace holds, we're looking at a genuine supply crunch within a few weeks. The question is whether the price bottoms and reverses, or whether sellers keep undercutting into nothing. Either way, the inventory clock is ticking. 2. Edge of Eternities Play Booster Display. The supply test. Inventory grew 34%, and the price held. Does it grow again next week? Does the price hold again? This is the product that tells you whether Edge of Eternity's demand is real, or whether it's running on fumes from a small buyer base. And 3. Final Fantasy Chocobo Bundle Seller Count. It's dropped 27% in 2 weeks. If it drops again, the product goes from gaining to scarce fast. A sustained seller count below 50 at this price level is meaningful. Watch whether new supply enters or the exit continues. That is it for this week. Numbers are in their full report on the MTG Sold article. Talk to you next week. Thank you for listening.